Hello, good day. We will be discussing about the High Middle Ages. High Middle Ages are also known as High Medieval period. This period was a time of tremendous growth in Europe. It was a period of European history that lasted from 1000 to 1250 AD. Dito din na-form yung different forms of intellectual, spiritual, and artistic works. Kasama na din dito yung mga inventions na nakapag-contribute until today. Also, it was a period of great religious movements. High Middle Ages was marked by these historical events. First is yung rebirth of trade and town life. Towns were growing again because of improvements in agriculture. Isa sa mga reason ng pag-grow ng city and town in that time is yung improvements nga in agriculture. Farmers were able to clear forests. Nakapag-adapt din sila ng bagong farming methods na nakapag-increase ng crops at mabenta nila sa mga town markets. Also, revival of trade through common goods. Isa sa reason ng revival of trade is yung new stability and great climate. Sama din dito yung new trading routes na mas napapadali yung pagtitrade from one place to another. Second is yung rise in populations. Increasing population of Europe brought to great social and political change. Yung pagtaas ng population in that time is mas nakapag-lead pa sa great society and political change. Also, developments of rural exodus and urbanization. Yung rural exodus, ito yung movement of people from rural areas to urban areas para maghanap ng high-paying non-agricultural employment. Third is yung agricultural improvements. Growth of agriculture was largely due to refinement of medieval farming technology. Yung improvement of farming technology ay mas nakapag-contribute sa growth of agriculture in that time. Isa na dito yung improvement of flow na nag-result sa efficiency of output to feed more people than ever. Lastly is yung creation of new social classes. It is composed of three orders of people: nobles, clergy, and peasants. Nobles, ito yung middlemen between peasants and royal families. Yung clergy, ito yung formal leaders of established religions. While peasants, sila naman yung mga agricultural farmers or laborers. It is important to preserve and maintain these social classes to maintain the general equilibrium or the balance in society.
Good day everyone, I'm Mark Brian C. Quaderno and the topic that I will discuss for today is about life during High Middle Ages. During High Middle Ages was a period of tremendous population expansion. Ang estimated population sa Europe ay lumaki mula 35 to 80 million. Hindi sure yung dahilan pero sinasabi na dahil sa nangyaring improvement ng kanilang agricultural techniques at pagganda ng kanilang klima kaya lumobo yung kanilang population. As much as 90% of the European population remained rural peasants, or we can call it nowadays as farmers. Or may ihahalin tulad natin ito sa mga farmers. Ngayon, mayroon silang tinatawag na manorialism or manorial system kung saan merong noble lords sa manor house or sa mga villages at nagre-rent doon yung mga peasants. At nag-o-offer yung mga peasants ng iba't ibang serbisyo sa mga noble lords. Development of towns. Nagsimulang magtayo ng mga castles noong 9th and 10th centuries para sa dagdag security at protection mula sa mga invaders at iba pa nilang kalaban na lords. Mula sa gawang kahoy, pinatibay ito ng mga bato. Matapos magtayo ng castles, pinalibutan nila ito ng mga bahay at doon umusbong ang towns. Sa loob nun, gumawa rin sila ng mga iba't ibang shops at churches. A major factor in the development of towns including Viking invasions during the early Middle Ages, which led to villages erecting walls and fortifying their positions. Peasant life and nobility. Daily medieval life revolved around an agrarian calendar, kung saan majority ng oras nila ay pagtatrabaho sa sakahan. Nagtatanim ng mga pagkain para maitawid ang isang taon. Ganun din ang mga peasants. na nakatira sa manor sa castle. Nagtatanim at nag-harvest. Usually, tinatanim nila ay rye, oats, peas, and barley. The houses of medieval peasants were poor quality compared to modern houses. Kadalasan pa nga katabi nila yung mga alagang hayop sa bahay nila. Pero sa dulo ng medieval period, nag-improve na ang kanilang mga tirahan. Kung saan nagkaroon na ito ng mga rooms, nagkakwarto na. At yung iba pa ay nagka-second floor. Nobles, both the titled nobility and simple knights, exploited the manors and the peasants. Although, di nila pag-aari yung land, meron silang rights sa kinikita ng manor o sa iba pang lupain. System ito na tinatawag na feudalism. Nobles were stratified. Sa pinakataas ay yung kings and the highest ranking nobility. Kinokontrol nila yung large numbers of commoners at mga lupain. Sa lower position ng mga less nobles, may authority pa din sa mga smaller areas ng land at mas kaunting tao na lang yung minamanage nila. Pinakamababang level ng nobility ay knights. Hindi sila nagmamay-ari ng lupain, pero sila pa rin yung nagko-control dito. At obligado silang magbigay ng serbisyo sa mga nobles. Daily life of nobility, kadalasan ginagawa nila ay naglalaro sila ng mga games. Isa na dito ay ang chess. Mahilig din sila mag-play ng music or makinig ng music. Lastly, women and children. Three main activities performed by peasant men and women were planting food, keeping livestock, and making textiles. Women of different classes perform different activities, which urban women can be like their husbands as merchants or pwede din silang maging moneylenders. Middle class women pwede silang magtrabaho sa mga textiles, innkeeping, shopkeeping, at sa brewing industries. Townswomen, katulad sa peasant, ay sila ay yung mga nasa household. At pwede rin silang mag-engage sa trading system. Poorer women naman ay domestic servants. Sila yung mga laborers at mga labandera. Women performed not only housekeeping responsibilities like cooking and cleaning. Pwede rin silang gumawa ng iba pang trabaho like grinding, brewing, and butchering. Noble women were responsible for running a household and could occasionally be expected to handle estates in the absence of male relatives. For most children growing up in medieval England, 50% of children succumbing to fatal illness. By age 12, a child began to take on a more serious role in family duties.
Here are the 10 inventions during High Middle Ages. First one is the printing press was revolutionary. The printing press may well be the most important invention of the medieval era. It would gradually deprive the state and the church of control over information distribution, laying the foundation for the Protestant Reformation and the Enlightenment. Despite the fact that Johannes Gutenberg's popular press was created in the 15th century. Second, coffee house was ahead of its time. Coffee is thought to have been first introduced to the Ottoman Empire sometime in the 15th century, and it quickly took the Ottoman world by the storm. Coffee was first introduced to Europe in the 16th century, and by the 7th century, it had spread across the continent. The true significance of coffee in Europe, however, was not the bitter drink itself, but the coffee shop that sprung up to serve it. Third, the heavy flow led to the agricultural revolution. The widespread introduction of the heavy flow around the 9th century revolutionized farming in Europe. The invention of the heavy flow allowed areas with clay soil to be plowed, which was more fertile than higher soil types. This greatly increased crop yield, resulting in economic growth as well as the rapid growth of cities and trade, especially in northern Europe. Fourth, Verge escapement or mechanical clocks replaced hourglasses. The development of the Verge escapement would lead to the creation of the first mechanical clocks in around 1300 AD. By the 15th century, they had become widespread around Europe. Until the invention of the pendulum clock in 1656, they were the standard timekeeping system. Fifth, paper money is older than you think. Although paper promissory notes had been in existence for centuries, the first recorded use of government issue paper money was in 9th century China. By the 1120s, the Chinese government had begun using woodblock printing to manufacture its own state-issued paper currency, which was widely circulated. In the 13th century, travelers carried news of the government issue Chinese paper currency to Europe, but the notes would not become widely used in Europe until the late 1600s. 6. The hourglass was a great way of keeping time. The hourglass first appeared in Europe in the 18th century AD. However, there is little evidence of its use there until the early 14th century, when it first began appearing in European ship inventories. They were popular sight on ships, in churches, and in factories by the 15th century. They were the first dependable, reusable, and reasonably reliable means of measuring time, and they were only superseded by the mechanical clock. 7. Gunpowder changed the world. Gunpowder is a mixture of saltpeter, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal. Sir Roger Bacon experimented to the right ratio of ingredients, and is widely credited with developing the modern recipe and explaining the method of producing gunpowder in great detail. 8. The blast furnace first appeared in Switzerland and Germany. Blast furnace may have their origin as early as the 1st century AD in China, but they make their first appearance in Europe in the 1200s. Dorstel and Lapichan in Switzerland and Sauerland, Germany are the oldest European examples. There is also preliminary evidence of earlier ones dating from about 1100 AD in Sweden. 9. Liquor was a medieval thing. Distillation may well have been known in ancient times in the 4th century BC. Aristotle wrote about applying distillation to wine and other liquids, and there is evidence that the process was used as far back as 1800 BC to produce perfumes. Around 800 BC, the Chinese may have used distillation to make alcohol from rice, and distilled spirits were registered in Britain before the Roman conquest. True alcohol producing stills, according to most scholars, first appeared in Europe around the 13th century. Lastly, the wheelbarrow was invented in the Middle Ages. The earliest known wheelbarrows that there is archaeological evidence for were one wheeled carts that date to 2nd century China. Wheelbarrows first appeared in medieval Europe between 1170 and 1220. They're like modern wheelbarrows, had a wheel at or near the front. They were widely used for anything from mining to building by the 15th century.
Now, I'm going to discuss the contributions of High Middle Ages to science and technology. The Renaissance of the 12th century was a period of many changes at the outset of the High Middle Ages. It included social, political, and economic transformations and an intellectual revitalization of Western Europe with strong philosophical and scientific roots. For some historians, these changes paved the way for later achievements such as literary and artistic movement of the Italian Renaissance in the 15th century and the scientific developments of the 17th century. For science advancements, the first half of the 14th century saw the scientific work of great thinkers. The logic studies by William of Ockham led him to postulate a specific formulation of the principle of parsimony, known today as Ockham's razor. This principle is one of the main heuristics used by the modern science to select between two or more undetermined theories. After the Renaissance of the 12th century, medieval Europe saw a radical change in the rate of new inventions, innovations in the ways of managing traditional means of productions, and economic growth. The period saw major technological advancements, including the adoptions of gunpowder, vertical windmills, spectacles, mechanical clocks, water mills, building techniques like Gothic architecture and medieval castles, and lastly, agriculture in general like three-field crop rotation. European technical advancements from 12th to 14th centuries were either built on long-established techniques in medieval Europe. Often, the revolutionary aspect lay not in the act of invention itself, but in its technological refinement and application to political and economic power. Though gunpowder and other weapons had been started by Chinese, it was the Europeans who developed and perfected its military potential, precipitating European expansion and eventual imperialism in the modern era. Between 100 and 1300 AD, this period also saw the birth of medieval universities, which benefited materially from the translated texts and provided a new infrastructures for scientific communities.
Good morning, guys. So the part that assigned to me is to correlate on how discoveries during Middle Ages are being used until today. So the first that I will tackling about is the impact of having telescope in today's generation. After Galileo Galilei discovers the telescope, some new telescopes allows us to study objects in the universe by detecting the heat or radio waves, or also known as X-rays they emit. Telescopes are now discovering planets around other stars. Technically, it changed and opened our eyes in the universe. Early telescopes showed that Earth was not the center of the universe, as was previously believed. They also showed mountains and craters on the moon. And one of the most great thing, telescopes have also helped us understand gravity and other in studying Earth's climate crisis. On the other hand, after Zacharias Janssen developed a compound microscope, it was totally improved in today's generation. Microscope was transformed into a powerful instrument for seeing disease-causing microorganisms. Aside from that, the microscope has a major impact in the medical field. Doctors use microscopes to spot abnormal cells and to identify the different types of cells. This helps in identifying and treating diseases such as sickle cell, caused by abnormal cells that have a sickle-like shape. As a fact, It is more familiarized when the COVID-19 virus started to spread across the world. Then the last one is the printing press. After Johann Gutenberg invented this one, then it is more improved and being used in today's generation. Printing has affected modern society by influencing its very evolution across centuries. Now, we use printing for almost everything. We print clothing, license plates, coupons, advertisements, and many other everyday items besides the standard books and newspapers. If you look around the room you're sitting in right now, I bet you can find a lot of printed materials. Of course, technically has begun to evolve beyond the printing press. We often read printed materials on computer or smartphone screens, but printing is still important.